Who's our chanter this evening? Puneet?
Sure, I can chant tonight.
All right. And we're, Hemaleka is about to share. Did we do the allegory? I can't remember.
No.
I think we are starting chapter 5 tonight.
Starting chapter 5. All right. So this is where she talks about her unsavory friends.
I thought we were on 29.
Oh, okay, maybe.
29B.
No, that's right.
What did you say, Mark?
I said I thought we were on 29B. That's what I have written down.
All right, chapter 5, 29b. So I think we started the allegory?
No, not yet. 29B is right. Even that's what I have.
Okay.
All right, let's do that. Start right there.
Ityalocya te vidushi ubodhi yitashi priyam gopayanti swavaidushyam prahanya vyavyadeshatah. The extremely intelligent Hemalekha, thus having considered, wishing to teach her husband and concealing her learning, spoke to him through another pretext. Note, Hemalekha describes through an allegory her own liberation from the fetters of worldly existence in the following verses. The key to this parable is given in chapter 8, but notes are added to the following verses to enable the reader to follow the allegory intelligently.
Yes. So she's again trying to answer Hemachyuta's doubts by talking about her own liberation with this story, this allegory, this parable. Going on.
Shrinu Rajakumaredam Yanme Vrittam Puratanam Pura me Janani Kanchit Ridanaya Sakhi Dadao Saswabhava Sati Kanchit Sati Manusangata. Prince, hear this ancient story of mine. Long ago, my mother gave me a certain friend for playing with. She, who was naturally a good person, associated with a certain bad woman. And there's a note. Should I read the note? There's notes for.
Yes, read the notes.
All right. Note. The mother is pure consciousness. The heroine of the story, Hemalekha, is the soul or individualized consciousness called Jiva. The friend is the buddhi or intellect. The bad woman is avidya or nescience or ignorance.
Yes. So again, the jiva or the individuality has as its real nature consciousness. Now, don't worry about apparent tensions. Is the jiva, the individuality, a real thing? Or is it always just Brahman? Let's not worry about that. Let's just follow along the allegory. So the jiva, the individuality, has as its very dear friend buddhi, intellect. Now, what's happened? This intellect has had a bad association with avidya, ignorance. Going on.
Sa vichitra vidhascharya srishti samarthya sanyuta alikshita me jananyasak alikshita me jananyasak sakhya me sangata bhavat. That bad woman was endowed with the power of creating wonderful things of various kinds. Unseen by my mother, she became associated with my friend. Note: when ignorance exercises control over the intellect of the individual soul, pure consciousness is not even aware of it. In other words, in reality, pure consciousness does not even cognize the intellect or the ignorance. Because, from the point of view of pure undivided consciousness, the intellect and the world do not exist. They are only false appearances like reflections in the mirror.
Yes. So When you hear stories about the world disappearing, you have to destroy the mind, Manunasha, and that will destroy the world. Or the stories about Lord Shiva opening his third eye, and that destroys the world. Understand that there's a deep meaning to this. And it is like this. When you're driving through the desert and you see the lake in front of you, your senses report water and your knowledge is water. If you keep driving and you see the lake receding, you have a deep, profound insight. Your senses continue to report water, but your knowledge is heat waves off the desert. So you have destroyed the water. So when we talk about the destruction of the world, it's subtle. So here when the scripture says that consciousness does not even recognize a phenomenal world, meaning it is all consciousness. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. That's what Chandogya Upanishad says. All this world is verily Brahman. The only thing Brahman can ever know is Brahman. Listen very carefully. The cognition of the phenomenal world is still Brahman knowing Brahman. There is no other thing for Brahman to know but Brahman. Here, Tripura. This is very subtle here. This is hard to grasp. Just put it on the shelf for now. The point is, as the result of avidya, the buddhi, the intellect, sees the world in a very different way. First thing that happens to the buddhi, the intellect, is veiling power. Even though the self is the most evident thing about you, in the subtle intellect, I have this non-apprehension of my essential nature. I do not know that I am Brahman. Then I have a subsequent misapprehension. I take the body as myself, and I take the world of name and form as solid and real and separate. Going on.
Sacharitraya antyatam sangata mama sasakhi pranebhyopi priyatama sada tad vashagahyaham. That friend of mine associated. Sorry, did I miss a verse? Okay, no. That friend of mine associated very much with that woman of bad conduct. She, my friend, was most dear to me even more than my life. I was indeed always under her control.
So, whatever form the buddhi takes, it then seems like the self takes that form. It is like a jewel being put on a piece of cloth. You put the clear jewel on a red piece of cloth, the jewel looks red. You put it on a blue piece of cloth, the jewel looks blue, etc. So when the buddhi is under the influence of ignorance, it seems like I am happy, I am sad, I am successful, I am a failure, etc. So it seems like the self rises and falls and changes, etc. It doesn't really, but it seems that way. I have a Sanskrit question, Puneet. Isn't the word for seemingly Eva in Sanskrit?
Yeah, that would be translated like as like.
Yes. All right, going on. Next one.
Natam vihaya me, natam vihaya me sanstha shanadha va kvachit bhavet sa nirmala swabhavena mam vashikritya sanstita nirantaram tadgatat masva bhava bhava manjasa. Leaving her, my continuance in my state cannot happen even for half a moment. She remained controlling me because of her stainless nature. I became truly one having her nature with myself reaching to her constantly.
I'm confused.
Should I read it again?
Read it again, please.
Leaving her, my continuance in my state cannot happen even for a moment. Even for half a moment. She remained controlling me because of her stainless nature. I became truly one having her nature with myself reaching to her constantly.
So, the Buddhi, what is the intellect? Understand this clearly. Your intellect is not aware. You are awareness. We have this marvelous image in the Mandukya Upanishad of the firebrand. I like to update it, the sparkler. So if on the 4th of July or on Diwali you have sparklers, at night you can make a circle with the sparkler, or you could make a figure 8. So what happens is when thoughting happens, it's like the circle in the sparkler. It appears. And then this thing called an intellect shows up. But it's actually thoughting that shows up. It has tremendous qualities and abilities. But it's not a solid thing. What happens to the circle and the sparkler when you stop moving it? You can't grab the circle. You can't stuff it back into the sparkler. So also, this intellect does not exist apart from awareness. In the end, we don't really even have states of consciousness. We are conscious of states of mind. Consciousness itself is sthita, still. All right, going on.
Jim, I have an observation. He translates it as she remained controlling me because of her stainless nature. So is she talking about the Buddhi's stainless nature?
Well, ultimately, what is Buddhi? Buddhi is awareness plus thought. So Buddhi ultimately has a stainless nature. What she's pointing at is the sattvic mind. So when the mind is sattvic, the Buddhi, it reveals the world of name and form as pure Brahman. Self is known as that partless awareness. There's no ignorance. So that's its real stainless nature. This is why the Buddhists will talk about mind with a small m and then mind with a capital M. Your Buddha nature. Does that make it a little clearer?
Sure, I guess just the wording is a little confusing. The fact that
I thought it was too. And unless she's talking about the jiva and the self, but I don't think she is. I get confused frequently going through it this way. Is there a note?
no, that's it. Should I do the next one?
Next one.
Sataya drishtaya yukta nataya chitrasvabhavaya paroksha vrittimanita swaputrena bhiyojita. Associated with that wicked actress having a diversified or strange nature, my friend was led towards unknown attitudes and joined to her son. Note, the son is moha or delusion. Unknown attitudes indicate desires for states like residence in heaven and efforts to achieve them. Or paroksha vritti also indicates secret conduct or vile associations and actions.
Yes. So here we mean things done in secret, the things that we're ashamed of. So when we're in the state of ignorance, we start to become deluded. What's the great delusion? It's not okay. I want more, better, different. If only I had this, if only I was free from that. These are delusory ideas because I don't understand what's going on. Next one.
Tasya putroti mudhatma madira ghurni tekshanaha bubhuje tam samakramya sarvada mat samakshataha. Her son, delusion, the son of ignorance, was extremely foolish and had eyes rolling unsteadily due to spirituous liquor. Taking possession of her, that is my friend intellect, he enjoyed her at all times in my presence.
So this is racy. The intellect then indulges in all the delusions that ignorance produces. And delusion is like a drunk. Eyes rolling in a blackout. Very, very vivid imagery here. So we've got an illicit liaison there. This clear intellect, which is pure by nature, now gets sullied by its intercourse with delusion. What do we mean here? What happens when we engage in the world egoistically? What do I mean by egoistically? With a sense of I-ness and my-ness. I, Jim, need the widget. Where's my widget stone? The widget, the stone here, that's where all the joy is. And I go after it. And then, yeah. And I attribute joy-giving qualities, or the reverse, misery-producing qualities to that widget. That leaves an impression in the unconscious. That's a vasana. It is the vasanas as they encrust the mind, Shankara uses a very beautiful example. It's like the silkworm cocooning itself. That's what vasana does. And it covers us, and we have the non-apprehension of our essential nature. We develop addictive relationships with the objects of the world. If I don't have that, I'm restless, irritable, and discontent. So that's the drunken state, moha. Going on.
Satena kranta sarvangi bhujya mana vasaram namam jaho kadachitcha tatsprishta tena chapyaham tata putra samutpunno mudhasya sadrishakritihi. She, with all her body overcome by him and being enjoyed by him every day, did not leave me at any time. Therefore, I was also touched or affected by him. Thereafter, a son was born to that foolish man, and my friend having a similar form. Note: even when overcome by delusion, all the functions of the intellect continue to be illuminated by the light of individualized consciousness, jiva. On account of identifying with the intellect, the individualized consciousness, jiva, considers itself as seized by delusion. The intellect overcome by delusion gives birth to the son, mind. The similarity of form refers to the falsity of its nature.
Yes. So what's the difference here between intellect and mind? Intellect is the place where thought happens. Mind is where we have the reactivity, the judgment of things, the values of things. So the intellect, when it's covered by delusion, attributes to the self the qualities of the not self. Where does the problem lie? Technically, it's in the buddhi. Or Shankara will use a different term for the same thing, the vijnana maya kosha, the intellectual sheath. That's where the misidentification takes place. Now, none of that touches the self. So you can go talk with a homeless person. How are you doing today? Oh, life is terrible. Do you know that it's terrible? Yes, I know that it's terrible. Are you miserable? Yes, I'm so miserable. Are you broke? Yes, I'm broke. Are you sick and tired? Yes, I'm sick and tired. Do you know that you're broke? Yes. Do you know that you're sick and tired? Yes. Do you exist? Yes. What's your existence? Miserable. They thunder, I know. I illumine everything. No one lacks for the experience of the self. It's the knowledge of the self that we lack. Both bondage and liberation occur to this subtle intellect. It is the subtle intellect covered by avidya, ignorance, that produces moha, delusion, which then engages us in the world in a way that creates vasana, which thickens the cocoon of ignorance. That same intellect, when it engages in sadhana, develops mature dispassion and engages in self-inquiry, gets rid of avidya. And that's the subtle intellect that becomes realized. What is realization? Not, oh, I'm a realized person. I'm so smart. I'm so holy. No, I'm not a person. I'm just that witnessing consciousness. No personal sense of self is real. Now, that insight doesn't change yourself. That insight, that profound insight, happens in the subtle intellect. Now, how do we go from what we call indirect knowledge to direct knowledge, from the theoretical to the direct experience? For some reason, this buddhi won't let go of its deep delusion unless it has the experience of its own disappearance, even if it's just for an instant. That's what we call samadhi. In the space between your thoughts, with the attentive faculty introverted, who knows the thoughts and the space between the thoughts? Can you see there's nothing there? If you can see that, glimpse it, it is your buddhi that's going, oh, there's nobody there. It didn't create yourself. You didn't turn into the self. What happened to the ego? What happened to the individuality? I don't know. It just left. One moment I thought I was a person, and now I see I'm not. And neither condition, in fact, ever touches yourself. So we've got two kinds of knowledge here. You've got the perfect knowledge, the self-evidence of I. How do you know you were you? You were self-evident. And then we have the aha that happens in the subtle intellect. This is difficult to understand, just put it on the shelf for now. It will become clearer as we get deeper into the scripture. All right, going on to this sordid tale.
Taruna sobhavat turnam ati chanchala sanstitihi pitu mordhyena sanyuktaha pitamahya gunena cha. That son became a youth quickly. His state was extremely fickle. He was endowed with the foolishness of his father and the quality of his grandmother. Note: mind, the offspring of delusion, is foolish. It has the ability, like grandmother ignorance, to bring about false perceptions or creations.
So it is the mind that creates the world. Mind is the world, and it's always filled with fickleness. I like the first chocolate. The 10th chocolate makes me nauseous. I like so-and-so today. Tomorrow, they annoyed me. Going all the way through our experiences, it's filled with likes and dislikes, raga and dvesha. Attraction and aversion. That didn't work, maybe I'll try this. Well, that didn't work, maybe I'll try that. Well, that didn't work, maybe I'll try that. It just flits from experience to experience, trying to wring out a little bit of juice out of life. Going on.
Aneka chitra nirmana samarthyena samavritah pitamahya shunyanam yanya pitra mudha bibdhena cha asthirahya shishikto bhut swayam chati visharadaha gatim prati padham vaish shigrat shigra shigram samasada. He was he was abounding with the ability for various strange creations. He, named Asthira or unsteady, himself very clever, was taught by his paternal grandmother having the name Shunya or void, and by his father having the name Mudha or foolish, and reached quickly a rapid course which was unobstructed. Note: the son, mind, is rightly named Asthira, unsteady. The grandmother, avidya or ignorance, is named Shunya or void, since ignorance has no substance or reality vis-a-vis the light of consciousness. The father, moha or delusion, is named Mudha or foolish, since delusion brings foolishness.
And some of you may have heard me say that Mudha was the name I called my mind when I was doing early sadhana, when I would find myself wanting and wanting and wanting. I was becoming so aware of how mechanical and repetitive it is. If you had a bad day this week, tell me this is the first time you've had that feeling. It's so repetitive. You keep doing it over and over again. Mudha, fool. Stupid is as stupid does. Such is the mind caught up in its delusion. And I love that they name ignorance shunya, void. You can't have 10 quarts of ignorance. Oh, I'm getting better. I have down to 3 quarts of ignorance now. Is ignorance a thing? No. Very interesting. Going on.
Evam mama sakhi swachha swabhava janmata sati asati sangatotyantam malinyam samupagata. Thus, my friend, having a pure nature and virtuous from her birth, went to the state of very great impurity by reason of the association of that wicked woman. Note: the intellect, though consisting of sattva guna or purity, on account of its association with avidya or ignorance, became qualified by rajaguna or passion and tamoguna or inertia.
Yes. So here, because of ignorance, it becomes diluted with tamas, extroverts into the world with rajas, gets caught up into the world of suffering. So, this idea of the subtle intellect, when all the extroverted thoughts cease, when the mind comes home, when the intellect here, we'll use that word, abides, in the self. It's like the waves of the ocean after the storm. They just go into the ocean itself. Stita, still established. Going on.
Sakhya priyena putrasat sasvabhavyutena sa chira sangatate shudrid anuragena samayuta. On account of long association with her friend, ignorance, her beloved delusion endowed with a wicked nature, and her son, the fickle mind, she was possessed of firm attachment to them.
So, because of long association, when the intellect engages in what we call chintya, in Hindi it means worry, I think, but in Sanskrit, or at least in yoga, we mean after the fact rumination over an experience. Oh, I really like that. That was really groovy doovy. Or, oh, that was terrible. I don't ever want to do that again. Get caught up in these stories. Go down the rabbit hole of thickening and thickening. So Uday, in our conversation last night, if the mind is deeply caught up in this rajas and tamas, having a practice that seems mechanical to do so many hundreds of repetitions of a mantra, is a good way to begin to move the mind towards sattva.
I see.
But as the mind becomes more and more sattvic, then those noisier forms of meditation, we drop away.
Got it.
And you're seeing this, your practice is the reverse of this descent of the psyche that she's talking about. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Going on.
Jahau maya anuragam tu sarvatha kramata sakhi aham swabhava sarala hatum tat sanga manjasa anisha tat paraivasam sarvatha tamuna brata. Gradually, my friend completely gave up her affection for me. I, sincere by nature and helpless in abandoning her company quickly, was devoted to her alone and following her course of conduct in every way. Note, the individualized consciousness or jiva got identified with the intellect and considered the functions of the latter as its own.
So with this identification, and again, the self is not what gets identified. It is in the subtle intellect. Language, even Sanskrit, begins to fail us a bit here. But the sense of the person as you're functioning in the world is it sure seems like I am my body. I am my body plus my mind and intellect. I am happy. I am sad. I am successful. I am tall. I am fat. I am old. I am young. I am all these accretions that have happened. In fact, none of it is true. The technical term here is called adhyas, superimposition. I attribute to the self the qualities of the not self. That's what happens. So it's not a real change of the self. Only seems like I'm that way. Going on.
अथ तस्या प्रियो मूढो भुञ्जनास्तां तु सर्वदा प्रसह्य मां समाक्रान्तुम् उद्यक्त सर्वथाभवत् नाहं स्वभाववन् शुद्धा वस्तु तत् सदृशं गता. Then her foolish lover, enjoying her always, became zealously active in every way to take possession of me forcibly. I, who am pure by nature, did not yield to him in reality. Note,
So here, this deluded mind wants to firmly believe that the self is modified and sullied. But no matter how much I may believe I'm a person with breath in my nostrils, and I rise and fall and go up and down, and I have form and qualities, it really never touches or affects the self. Now, in Gita, we have this marvelous term called asparsha yoga. The root is prichati, which means to touch. So asparsha means untouched. Yoga means joined. So the body, mind, intellect, my senses, my feelings, my thoughts, my memories, everything, none of it could function without the enlivening principle of awareness, the touch of Brahman. Yet, Brahman never is really touched by it. Just like if the room is filled with smoke, you burn something in the oven and the room is filled with smoke. Is the space sullied? Open the windows, turn on the fan, clear the smoke out, but has space undergone any change? No. So we don't purify the self. Your self is already pure. All right, next verse.
तथापि लोके मे त्यन्तं परिवादो महानभूत् मूढेन सर्वथेयं च भुज्यते इति सर्वतः. Even then, there arose a great stigma for me in the world forever thus. This one is entirely enjoyed by the foolish one at all times.
So, in the world, it seems like, oh, you see that fellow Jim over there? He is a rascal. He's so impure. You wouldn't believe what I saw him doing in an alley the other night. Absolutely shameful. So in the world, we also attribute to the self of others the impurities of the body, mind, and intellect. So again, you walk down the street, you see the most impure person. I know, Donald Trump. I tell you, The self in him is God. It is pure consciousness, and the self in him has never been touched by any of his behavior, his words, his feelings, his thoughts. He too is a divine incarnation of God, just a rather strange one. So there's a wonderful practice here. As you come across people in your life, look in their eyes. I had a friend who was a poet who called them, how did she phrase it? Magic holes in eternity. A conscious being looking out of those eyes, no matter who it is. It's Krishna, it's the Lord. There is no other conscious being. All that changes is the costuming. Next verse.
Asthitrakyam swaputram sa mayi nyasya sakhi mama priyena samparikshatva sarvatha tatpara bhavat. She, my friend, entrusting her son Athira unsteady to me and embraced by her lover, was devoted to him at all times.
So again, it is, she entrusts the unsteady mind to consciousness. So the mind itself, even in its most miserable state, is still illumined by consciousness. Was there a note there, Puneet?
No note for this one.
Okay, next one.
Athasthiro maya samyag lalita poshitastatah praudhastriyam pitamahyam anumatyopasangatah. Then Asthira, unsteady, was fondled and nourished by me well. Thereafter, he associated with an adult lady with the permission of his paternal grandmother. Note, this grown-up lady is Kalpana, or imagination. Her name given in the next verse indicates her nature.
Yes. So the mind is fondled by the self. Here is a reference to the fact that whenever I satisfy a desire, the point of pleasure, when desire and object of desire become one, I may think the pleasure is in the person, place, thing, or situation, but really, it's myself. Sometimes we make the distinction between worldly pleasures and spiritual things. And in the end, we see there's no such thing as worldly pleasure. It doesn't exist. In my delusion, I think the world is pleasurable. The world isn't bad either. It's shunyata. It's void. I decide that it has joy-giving or misery-producing qualities. When I get what I want for a moment, I get a taste of my own self-nature. So this is where She fondles the mind frequently. But then it gets caught up in all these bad associations going on.
सा प्रिया तस्य चपला विधाना हि प्रतिक्षणं प्रियस्य सन्मतं रूपं भिन्नं भिन्नं मनोहरं गृह्णात्याश्चर्यजननं प्रियमेवं स्वके वशे चक्रे सात्यन्तनिपुणा स्वप्नैपुण्यवशात् खलु. That lover of his, named Chapala or Fickle, takes different fascinating forms liked by her lover every moment, which produces wonder. Thus, she who was extremely clever indeed brought her lover under her control through her cleverness.
So these are the imaginations. All the things I imagine are going to bring me pleasure or sorrow. How the mind then creates these images, these wishes and intentions and things like that. Going on.
Asthiropi shaneneva tva sankhya shatayojanam prayata yayati chat sada na shranti mupagachati. Asthira, who always goes forth and reaches countless hundreds of miles, even in a moment, and does not suffer fatigue.
So this is the nature of the mind, this unsteady mind. It can go anywhere. So for example, those of us here in the States, we can close our minds and let's imagine Chennai. There it is, the warm 85 degrees, the warm rain. I can remember this wonderful temple that I visited there. And then there's the Cathedral of St. Thomas. And those of you who are in Chennai, you can imagine UC Berkeley. Can you imagine the campanile, the tower? You hear it ringing through the day, hiking up those hills. See how you can go there in a trice in your imagination. Next one.
Samihate yatra gantum sthiraksha cha yada yada tasyeshtam cha swarupam tu kritva sa chapalapihi tatra tatra stitata bhutva ramanya tyeva svatpriyam. Whenever Asthira wants to go anywhere, that Chapala, his lover, also becoming established in those places and indeed making her own form agreeable to him, quite pleases her lover.
So it's literally through the imagination that I decide that something is pleasurable or not. That's why there seems to be a variety of what we like and what we don't like. So like, Puneet, didn't you used to play, wasn't it like a heavy metal band you played in?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I think it's disgusting music. What's the difference? Imagination. That's all. I superimpose upon these neutral sounds judgments. That's all it is. Going on.
Evam sa chapala samya gasthirena yuta sati sushuve panchatanayan mata pitra parayanan te samartha panchavidha mai sakhya niveshitaha. Thus, that Chapala, being united with Asthira completely, gave birth to 5 sons attached to their father and mother. They were of 5 kinds and were capable. They were entrusted to be my friend. Note: the 5 sons are the 5 organs of perception relating to sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. Mind and imagination thrive on sense perceptions. So, the sons are said to be attached to the parents. They are said to be entrusted to the soul or individualized consciousness, since the latter is identified with sense perception in worldly life.
Yes. And the senses are illumined by awareness. I know that I hear a sound. I know that I smell the incense. I know that I taste the chilies, etc. Going on.
Aham sakhya nuraktātān kurva balavataran atha te panchatanaya chapalaya prithak prithak chakru rayantanam shreshtham vichitramati vistritam pitaram swavashe chakrum artra samyag vibhavitaha. I, who was attached to my friend, made them stronger. Then those 5 sons of Chapala severally constructed a house, each which was most excellent, wonderful, and very much spread or developed. Fostered well by the mother, they brought the father under their control. Note: the house indicates the external organs of sense perception: ear, skin, eye, tongue, and nose.
Yes. So the senses themselves are subtle. Now we're going to the external organs as they function through the physical body. How much longer is the allegory? Can you peek ahead? Because it's already 8:30.
I think there's some more.
Quite a bit more, if I recall, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll take a break here. And so what we're talking about is this descent, as it were, of conscious. It's another one of these spiritual anthropology sections of trying to explain here in terms of an allegory what it is that's going on in us. And just to review, I, self in me, is the self in all. So the individuality, and again, because this is a tantrika text, whether don't worry about that piece of it. One thing it will say is the essence of the jiva is that it's pure consciousness. And its dear friend in the individual equipment is buddhi, the intellect. And when the buddhi is sattvic, then I know I am that partless Brahman. And all this is the play of consciousness. But if that intellect gets covered by avidya, all sorts of problems happen. The fruit is ignorance, delusion, stupidity, attachment to the world, all that stuff that we're going to talk about. Don't worry, at the end of the allegory, she tells us how to get out of it. All right, any questions about the story? Or questions about any other aspect of your practice? No questions, or everybody's just quiet?
Just quiet.